Welcome to this presentation on the history of core cultivation or aerification. Aerification is an important management practice done on high-quality turf. It is important in relieving soil compaction and controlling organic matter accumulation. It is a controversial practice that is agronomically required, but golfers do not like it because it disrupts the turf surface. The idea of aerification was developed by Old Tom Morris. Old Tom Morris, who is shown here getting ready to hit a golf shot, was a greenskeeper or keeper of the greens at St. Andrews through the mid to late 1800s into the early 1900s. The earliest means of instituting practices to relieve soil compaction was done with earthworms. Earthworms are effective means of relieving soil compaction as they move through the soil. They also live off of the organic matter or thatch by digesting the material and then passing it through their system, helping break it down into smaller components that other soil microorganisms then can break down further. Old Tom Morris would collect and enhance the native earthworm population by placing his collected earthworms on the golf course and letting them do what they do. Here's a picture of earthworm casts on a golf course fairway. These casts often presented an obstacle to playing golf. If it was wet, as it was and is in the United Kingdom, the profuse production of earthworm casts would cause the golf course to be muddy and disrupt the playing surface. In many cases, during active earthworm casting, the courses would be closed. Except for Old Tom Morris, golf courses tried to kill the earthworms. Old Tom Morris continued to work until 1908 when he passed away. Following his death, part of managing the course consisted of killing the earthworms. The St. Andrews golf course and putting greens increasingly became more compacted. Horace Hutchinson, who was an accomplished golfer at the time and also a writer, wrote, "If you remove them, you must do something to help the richness and aeration of the ground." Thus the first aerifier was no doubt a pitchfork. Pitchforking was a slow process. Usually 2 men would work a green 6 inches at a time, stabbing the fork into the ground, rocking it back and forth to create a hole. Remove it without disrupting the surface adjacent to the hole, then move a few inches and start the process again. Didn't take long to think there must be a better way. Various types of aerification were attempted early on. In the 1920s, golf courses in the United States would send workers out with a shoe or something like this to aerify the greens. After a few broken ankles, this method would be quickly discarded. Actually, this picture is from Vietnam, taken a number of years ago, where workers would walk around the greens with these on to aerify. Devices like these were developed where a worker would manually push the tines down into the ground and then remove a core. Here, the previous types of coring devices are being used on this golf course green in Kenya. Needless to say, this is hard work and takes a considerable amount of time. They did do a great job of spacing, in this case on a 2-inch by 2-inch spacing. The first powered aerifier was developed by Tom Mascaro in 1946, called the West Point FG1. Tom Mascaro is shown here standing second from the left. The machine that the man is kneeling next to is a verticut mower that Mascaro invented in 1955. The aerifier you will see in the following slide. Some background on Tom Mascaro. He had polio when he was very young in the 1920s. He did get a technical degree in business in 1936. When he graduated, he couldn't afford the 50 cents to pay for the actual diploma. He did, however, go back and get it in 1981. His family were mushroom farmers around West Point, Pennsylvania. The family farm was going bankrupt in the 1930s. It was the Great Depression. However, Tom figured out he could take the mushroom waste and compost it and sell it to golf courses. At the time, golf course fertilization was done using material from the golf course itself, compost or waste. thus Tom Mascaro's introduction to golf course management. Because of his childhood polio, he was classified as 4F and couldn't serve in World War II. He did become a defense subcontractor, manufacturing steel struts for wooden gliders that were used in the invasion of Normandy. Given his technical ability gained as a subcontractor and his familiarity with golf course management, he developed the first powered aerifier. Although fuzzy, the picture is of the first aerifier, the West Point FG1. 2 years later, a golf course superintendent, Mal McLaren, figured out how to attach it to a tractor using hydraulics to transport and use from green to green. From the first aerifier, improvements continued. Here is what you might have seen in the 1960s and early 1970s. Ryan's greens airs dominated the golf industry from the 1960s up into the 1990s. Improvements have continued with the likes of this Toro 648, which is widely used to relieve soil compaction and manage organic matter accumulation. Variations of aerification have evolved into machines that can core to depths as deep as a foot. Units that drill holes and fill with sand are also available. Besides the mechanical, hollow or solid tines that are pushed into the ground, high-pressure water injection has been used for aerification. In this case, water is fed to the unit, where it is injected into the root zone under high pressure, usually around 2,500 psi. You can see the impact of water injection on the soil when a plug was removed. The Toro Hydroject is no longer made, but a version of it is known as the Dryject, where the combination of water and sand are injected under pressure. Just another picture of the Dryject in operation. The impact of the Dryject can be seen in this cross-section of the root zone. Other devices too have come on the market that inject air under pressure into the soil, causing shattering in an attempt to relieve soil compaction. These are the injectors that go into the soil from the prior shown machine. The air is forced out through the holes. A lot has changed since the early days of old Tom Morris and Earthworms, but the goals are the same whether using Earthworms or new advanced equipment, relieving soil compaction and controlling organic matter and thatch accumulation.